I appreciate your patience with me. I think I'm okay. It's somebody I've known for a while, and so I wanted to give them the time that they needed.
Of course.
Today we're going to talk about the quality of life, and it hits home even more when that's going on, right? When we think about we don't have a life forever, and we need to take advantage of the days that we have and what we're going to use it for. How do we make sure that we're doing it properly? And so, interestingly enough, do I have the ability to move?
So I think I'm gonna have to draw it
Okay.
for you, brother.
All right. Thank you. If you'll put it to the next slide. Over the course of time, we can figure out how we choose what our quality of life will be and what that will look like. And this presentation comes to us from a great partnership between the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Hartford Funds, companies like CVS, and other schools like Harvard, who have come together to look at what happens when aging is going on, and what do we do to make aging an easier and smoother process for us as part of our life stages, and how do we make sure that we're doing the right things for folks as they do that. The picture you see on the right is the gentleman Joe Coughlin, who started the MIT Age Lab. And if you'll go another slide forward, I'll show another picture associated. I may have skipped one more. Yeah, I have skipped it, pardon me, because I don't want to just overdo with time. But Joe spent some time figuring out what do people need. And so I mentioned CVS earlier as an example. If you've been into a CVS in the last couple of years, you've seen that the aisles are lower and they're wider, so that folks in wheelchairs or other mobility needs can get around and see and do what they need to do. They do things like working with automobiles so that vision and visibility will be better for those who are driving, and so that they can drive. And you'll see a lot of different ways that it helps our quality of life. There's going to be 3 segments inside here. The idea of what is important to you, your personal agenda. Everybody has a different view of what retirement is and what the quality of life for them will be. 3 questions that help predict our quality of life. And they're going to seem a little weird, but please give me a little bit of a leniency in that, because I think you'll see how they fit in the overall financial and life plan. And a brief minute about discussing intentional investing. I think about investing as a financial advisor as how do we figure out what's the right allocation of how much risk am I taking and what choices am I making in those risks, and what do we do? But intentional investing is also about what are the things that I want and need, and how do I make sure I get there? So that's what we'll look at over the course of there. If you'll move the slide for me, I'm gonna let Robbie actually share that, and I'm gonna take one more sip of water.
Yeah, there you go. So this is a speaking group, really a public service group that Jeff and I have been a part of for about 2.5, 3 years, where it's a collaboration of different folks in different areas of specialty, verticals, whatever you want to call it, that are specific to all things aging. So we've got a gerontologist with Susan. Jeff's our financial side. Joyce does placement. Kim and Lori are with moving. Blake and Patricia help with real estate transactions. John's our elder care attorney, and I'm the home care agency. So it's all the different broad aspects of folks as they age. They're going to need these services, and we're experts in our own little market. So we have a 25 to 30 speech repertoire that we offer as public service to the communities, to the public, to nonprofits like DAPS as well, just as a public service to help senior, because aging is very hard. It's challenging. So we try to make the process a little bit easier. So today we're talking about how 3 very simple questions can determine how well you're going to age.
Thank you, Robbie. Very good. Let's go ahead. One more slide. So in the personal agenda that we're talking about here, what's important to you as you age? And maybe that's my needs. Maybe it's where am I going to live? Maybe it's how am I going to get around? Maybe it's about what am I going to do with myself or for myself or for others. And so you see an awful lot of bubbles there that talk about choices that we make and decisions that we have. And I don't want it to seem like that volume is that high, and we want to simplify it. So let's go to the next slide and look at what that might be, because we've got this level of information overload coming at us. 20 bubbles that you just saw, and if I just Google one thing, I get 3.2 million answers right there. I'm not going to go search down all those to make those decisions. And how do I figure out what that is? And how do I do it somewhat quickly and efficiently? Because I don't want to spend all my time reading every single one of these and comparing them. I respect the industry that I'm in, and I believe that most financial advisors, especially certified financial planners who've done the extra work to be a fiduciary, that if you're working with a different financial advisor, good for you. That's wonderful. I'm not pushing that on it by any means, but I certainly don't want you to go interview 25 or 2,500 or 2.5 million financial advisors to figure out which one the best is. You've got to figure that for yourself. And so when decisions come faster with that much information, we want to find ways to simplify that. So let's move that to the next slide. And I would tell you that you may not need a financial advisor at all. You may be taking care of business on your own. My dad has had a subscription to Money Magazine for 40 years, and he thinks he knows everything. But interestingly enough, there's always a call every time Money Magazine comes out. What do you think about this? And I get it torn out of the magazine, and it is physically mailed to me in Dallas. He lives in Kansas City. And then we have a conversation afterwards. That's what works for him. So that's okay. But it slows things down. And so if that's all right, that works. And we need to make sure, though, that we make it as simple as we can. You can go to the next one. It's all right. What we're looking at as we simplify our world is how do we make sure that we're going to be able to handle it for as long as we're living, right? And the reality is that if we make it to age 65, we have a high likelihood that we're going to make it well beyond there. I share it. Sometimes we talk about the idea that Social Security came into play in the 1940s at age 65, so we could be retired and not worry about it. But it turns out that we were only expected to live to age 65. So 1 year of Social Security, we weren't taking care of a whole lot. It took all the way up until 1975, 30 years later, before our life expectancy even got to 75 years of age. So 50 years later, 30 years later to go 10 years. And now just 20 years after that, it grew another 20 years. And so the likelihood now that we're looking at is that if we reach 65, we have a likelihood of hitting 95. And 30 years in retirement is a lot. So we need to make sure that we're planning for that entire lifetime. Let's go on to the next slide. So now when we talk about this, what are the three questions that are going to mystify us and go, that is so simple? I get it. Let's do it. It's not quite that simple, but it's easy stuff. And please be lenient with me. These seem like very simple things. They'll hit on all aspects of our financial lives. So when we think about who will help me change my light bulbs in my house when I can't get around and I need some help going on, or I choose not to be in my house, I'm in an independent community or I'm in an assisted living community, is that already taken care of for me? And how does taking that responsibility off of me make it easier? The second question is, how will I get an ice cream cone? I'm going to share with you that that's about how am I going to make sure that I can get where I want to go, right? So if I need to get that ice cream cone, I've got to be able to drive or get ridden or driven there. That's important. And the third one, also very, very important, who will I have lunch with? That sounds kind of the same, but really how will I get an ice cream cone as transportation, and who will I have lunch with is more about the social aspects. And we'll go into those in quite a bit more detail. So let's hit that. The first one, who's going to change my light bulb? Am I going to stay where I am? What will that cost? It's okay, you can go to the next slide. How much is that going to cost me to live in a different place or to stay in my home? Am I capable of doing that? The reality is that this is the largest consumer expenditure that most of us have. If we're going to stay in our house. We're paying for mortgage. We're paying for the interest on the house. We're paying for the taxes and the insurance, and we're paying for the maintenance and the utilities. And you know what's in the cost of it. 35% is the average that folks are using their budget with to have just their housing, just to be able to be in a place that's safe. What if I moved up because I live in Dallas and McMansion land, and I said, I appreciate that, but I need a house that's going to be 45% because I want to look good and I want to share it. And you may be some of those folks, and that's wonderful, or 50%. You can certainly live on that, right? You just have to reduce other expenditures. You might choose that's the way you want to live, or you might choose to be much much more frugal about it, and then find out you need some extra help inside that house, right? So we'll talk about that in a little more detail. And then the other part about housing that's important to think about is that if we are going to spend our dollars, a third or more of our funds on that, are we making sure that they're the way that we want to live? So if you'll go to the next slide, I'll show a little bit about what we're going to spend that 35% will help us with. The first thing is home modifications, a really big deal, especially as we age. Maybe we're raising countertops. Maybe we're pulling out shelves that will allow us easier access higher, so we don't have to bend down as far. Maybe it's easier access to that. Home maintenance. Can I still hang new pictures, or can I move furniture? How do I get help for those things if and when I need that? Universal design is a really important piece, and home maintenance associated with that design theoretically reduces, once we've spent those dollars, to widen hallways and remove steps and put down carpet that won't tack up. But we need to make sure that it's still maintained properly even over the years. Housekeeping becomes a difficult piece. So that's, I know my family loves it when we're on vacation and they don't have to make their beds, right? That's a big deal, and that's nice. And that may be an important piece for you. So that can be a part of the expenditures you're thinking about in your home to give you that same level of comfort. And then the two you see on the right are services that are outstanding. How much has happened in the last 5 years to provide so much accessibility in our home without going out? And just in the last year, seeing how much has changed with technology. Shoot, we're on Zoom now, and that company didn't exist 2.5 years ago. It was such a micro space, nobody was thinking of it. Now we can do almost all we want, which is nice. Still want a little bit farther into there. So I'm going to share a picture of what that looks like in what I call universal design. That might be removing steps. It might be raising the countertops. It might be in the bathroom, right? No step in. Might be a bath fitter, right height toilet seats. My parents now both have on their commodes, they have bidets. There's wonderful opportunities and options that allow us to age in place. Many monitoring opportunities inside there. So if the adult children are worried about mom or dad, can we see through a Facebook portal, or can we have other solutions that are tracking heart pressure and durable medical equipment, so we're sure we have those things. So these things are things we're looking at quite a bit that make a whole lot of ease in the home. Next slide, sir. The idea of living in my own home and being able to handle it myself is wonderful. The communities, if I move out into a retirement community, can also be wonderful. There's availability and support right there, but our neighbors might be right there. And we might like them or not like them. That's part of the choices that we have to make, and we might move because of that or choose to stay there longer. The village movement is something that started in Boston, Beacon Hill area. Robbie, do you want to talk about that for a second?
Yeah, just for a second. So the whole concept behind the village movement, which is not that old, did start in Beacon Hill in Boston, a very condensed, dense neighborhood with a lot of services where the younger seniors were taking care of the older seniors, and they paid it forward throughout the years. And that movement has really gone around the world. And so I've got a whole presentation on that. I've actually done it for the DAPS meeting before. So it's just basically where you age in place. You don't ever have to move, even to any level, but those around you in your community, like a village, saying it takes a village, can help folks stay safe and sound at home without ever having to make a move. And Beacon Hill was just a perfect petri dish for that to develop, because there's restaurants, grocery stores, everything's right there in that little dense neighborhood. So that's where it started. So that's just one example of what people as they age have options for.
Yeah, and that's still private, and there are senior communities that are set up like that, whether it's Beacon Village or others. There's plenty. Beacon Hill is in Massachusetts, in the Boston area, Alicia. All right, will you go to the next slide for me, Robbie?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Very good. So we've talked about, okay, if I'm going to stay there in my house or in my community, Beacon Village, or in, let's say, a continuing care community where I start independent, I move to assisted, or I move on to memory or whatever I need to, that it's available in that place. Or I might move from one place to another. I get tired of this community and I move, because sometimes there's a buy-in and a sale. Those things are available. And so we can make those choices. But I can tell you that as we age, we have less patience for another large move, even though we may have downsized, even though we have beautiful places. So finding the place we want to stay, or finding our plan for how long we want to stay where we are and where we're going, is an important piece. I will share with you, I was just in Kansas, where my family lives, and my parents finally said to me, they've worked with them on long-term care plans and where they are. They moved out of a 2-story house, actually a 3-story house, to a 1-story apartment, independent. And they just shared in December that if and when one of them passes, and they don't pass exactly together, they don't have a pact like that. So when that happens, that they actually will want to move to an assisting community, and they'd both be independent enough to be in independent living, but where they can have assistance, and they want to have that community around them. And that right now they have enough of that with where they are. Those are important decisions and discussions. And frankly, it's 8 years in the making. And so it can take some time, and we want to not hurry each other to that. We want to make sure that those are there. And it brings us to, okay, if I'm going to make sure I know how I want to live, how will I want to live socially is also important. And that's where we said, how will I get an ice cream cone? Where am I going to go? How am I going to get there? How am I going to transport around? And how am I going to find that social? If you'll go to the next slide, sir. The interesting thing that we find is that folks will want to make sure that they're getting back to their friends, et cetera. And there are 4 8s that I like to call inside here, that folks really will find a whole lot more that they're doing. I won't give you all examples of my parents, but I can share with you that there are lots of folks who said they used to donate before, but now giving an hour or 4 or 8 a week, or doing that, they're donating with their time and or their dollars, becomes a very fulfilling thing. And as we look at that social aspect of that, it's fulfilling because they're with others. Even this last year, during all the COVID and all the Zoom as the only way we're socializing together, we found knitting corners, folks making scarves and blankets together virtually on Zoom, and having conferencing and such. It's been wonderful. The idea of congregating, I appreciate that you shared that I am the finance director at my temple. The idea of congregating in our congregation is completely different. We did not have any services in the building since March 13th or 14th, whatever that Friday was. And I'm a Sunday school teacher there as well. We've been teaching virtually and live, but our live teaching has been outdoors. So we've got ways to do that and help us congregate. And that's a wonderful space. That doesn't have to be just a religious thing by any means, but getting together and having that social is important. The educate piece, I also love. I'm going to share a slide about that in more detail, but how much continuing education we have just because we're interested, and now it's all available on this internet that we have. Wonderful inside there. And then I leave recreate to the last one because I will share that while all of those are important and we think of those as important pieces, everybody tells me when their retirement plans are, it's about vacations. It's about where am I going, how much of my time I spend there. Recreating is fabulous. It may all be done locally. You might just be hiking or biking or walking with folks, but getting together and recreating is important. So let's go to the next slide, Robbie, and we'll hit that. The recreating and the portion of being social has really been married from my world. Go to Temple Shalom, I'm Jewish. We eat everything, right? It's all about eat more, have another food. And I love that. But the food expenses, the food category from an expense perspective may not seem very large at 12%, but that's a lot. And we see when folks retire, their first thing they do is start going out to eat all the time. And we put on a little extra weight. COVID has put on a little extra weight for a lot of people, including me, because it makes it a whole lot easier. And now Uber Eats and all the ways that we can send food and have food transferred in boxes of food that allow us to cook for ourselves. We have to be careful of those expenses. But if we do that socially, it's a wonderful way to keep us together, and sharing a meal is a really wonderful bonding space. So make sure we know that we have that expense, but we don't overdo it inside there, and that we use that opportunity for socialization, and that we socialize in multiple places. Even so, I have a client who lives in Highland Springs. That's a huge complex. And they can go from building to building and eat in different dining rooms. And they can go into private rooms and they can eat with each other. And there's spaces inside there. I remember I took my kids to visit their grandmother in Kansas, and their memory was that there was an ice cream parlor, which it was one frozen place with chocolate and vanilla. That was great for grandmother to get to share an ice cream cone with her grandchild. And so that ice cream cone is, for me, a really wonderful one inside of food. Let's go to the next slide, Robbie. If we're congregating and recreating, what are we doing that with? What are we looking for? And so we spend dollars to enjoy ourselves, and we should enjoy ourselves not just by ourselves, but it's okay to enjoy time on your own, but that we are recreating and entertaining with each other, and that keeps us feeling young. And it's an important space inside there. And I don't make these budgets up, although I make budgets up regularly in my business. I would tell you that there are lots of people, at least in my client base, that would say entertainment at 6% is nowhere near what it needs to be. This, just like I said, for some folks in Dallas, housing needs to be 55%, 45%, 35%. That's what I like better. But if you say 12% for entertainment, okay, it's just what are we going to cut else on? And that's okay. But this gives us a good picture of how much we might be spending to make sure that we're able to do the recreating, congregating, educating, that opportunity comes to us. We go to the next slide for me. The other part was donating, right? And donating is about how much am I going to provide. I've shared with you, I'm Jewish. The Catholic Church says tithing is 10%. I don't care if you decide that tithing is 20%. I have clients that do that. I don't care if you said that the charitable contributions are all going to be in service for me. I'm not spending cash, but I will put my time out there. There's an estimated inside there from a budget perspective, so we consider that. But it's certainly up to you. But I can tell you that when we look at that socialization, the ability to discuss what I'm doing and how I'm helping others is a real source of pride. It gives us some longevity, and our heart is filled. And so it shows up in the budget as dollars, but it shows up in how am I going to get that ice cream cone as a lot of socialization and a lot of pride and life stage benefit. I like that a lot, and we'll move ahead. All right. The third question is about how am I going to get out where I'm going, right? So if go back to that slide, I have to share this one. Yeah, so you see the gentleman on the left and the young lady on the right, and that guy in the pink Cadillac, he is the king of the chicken coop, right? I don't mean to say this in a bad way. Men don't live as long as women, and the man who can still drive in a community of seniors is going to be really, really popular. And that's important. Now, there are plenty of senior women who are able and capable of driving, and they'll drive men around, and they'll be popular too. But because there are less men as our aging comes on, as men live shorter lives, we'll find that they become much more popular. And so this is about transportation. And before you go forward to the slide, if you look on the slide of the three cars, the middle is a Volvo, very safe car, does a really wonderful job with they were like the first to help with lane violations and stuff, so that you keep your car straight. And the car to the right, the Volkswagen, is actually part of the MIT Age Lab, and it helps autonomous driving, and how does that work, and how does that look, and how does that look for a senior who's in with the driving wheel, and how does that work through that very well. The BMW on the left is just a beautiful car because we hope that we are saved up and we're taking advantage of those benefits. Let's go in and talk about transportation now in a little bit more detail. We said that housing was the most expensive piece, right? Transportation becomes a very expensive piece as well. And I shared quite a bit of time on that. And I'm going to try to cut it down a little, but I get eager and excited about it. For those of you who don't know, I gave up my car. I'm 54 years old. It's not because I can't drive. I do. We have 3 cars in a 4-person household, and I think that was more than it needed to be. So before my daughter got her car at 16, she's now 20, I spent 2 years testing Uber and Lyft and rideshare programs to see how easy it was, how long extra it took, how safe I felt, and how much it costs. So transportation in this 15% cost, we look at gas, maintenance, insurance, all of those things. That's a big darn deal. And 15%, let's suggest, of your $100,000, that would be $15,000. That's a lot to spend in a year. If I was just, you can go to the next slide if you like. It's going to show a picture of it for us. Oh, it's not. I've hit it. Sorry. So we'll leave it here. If I was to buy a Honda Accord for my daughter when she was turning 17, and I wouldn't buy her the new car, she would get the used one. But if I was going to buy that car for myself, not a special car, it's just, I like a Honda Accord. I'm not trying to point you down that path. I'm also a Toyota fan. I'm also a Ford fan. It's okay. But if I was going to buy a Honda Accord, basic model, 30,000 bucks. Let's say that my credit is awesome and I'm going to get 0% finance, going to negotiate a good deal. And over 60 months, I'm going to spend that $30,000, 5 years, say the car will last 5 years. That's about $500 a month. That's not a small amount, right? However, it's not just the car's cost, right? I have to pay fuel for it. I have to have oil changes for it. I have to have insurance on it. I have to have parking fees sometimes. I will share with you.
I just bought 4 new tires for 800 bucks.
Yeah, maintenance is huge. Not only does $500 spend more than I've ever spent in now 4 years with my carless car, by either renting for the day or using an Uber or a Lyft. I have not spent over $465. That was one time in 1 month in those 4 years. And I would tell you that if I put all those things together, that $500 payment times 60 months to get 30,000. If I add the insurance and the repairs and the maintenance, et cetera, the gas, I expect the cost of a car, Honda Accord, not a BMW sitting there, is about $800 a month. And now, of course, if you're going to keep that car for 10 years, the cost comes down. Let's say you kept it 10 years, and I'm going to just break it in half, even though you'll still have maintenance and more maintenance. But let's say that was, instead of 800 bucks a month, it's 400 bucks a month. Well, I shared I've only spent 1 month at over 450, and I've only had 4 months at over $400. Uh, I could share more details on that, but it's expensive to own and manage a car. It's wonderful. It's independence. If you want it, that's fabulous. But I will share with you that I have not had a Uber that has taken more than 18 minutes to arrive, and most of it is within 6 minutes. I have not had an Uber driver who, or Lyft, or any of those, who has been rude to me or assaulting. I have had some that are more aggressive drivers. They all follow directions, and if I ask them to change something, they've been wonderful about that. I've found it wonderful, even for me, if I'm driving 20 minutes to get downtown, the opportunity for me to work in their car and not have to look up and just get everything done, or sit on a conference call, or whatever I'm doing. It opens up more time for me. I love that very much. Um, I met I worked at Sprint for 25 years, and one day I had an Uber. This was about 2.5 years ago. I was picked up in a silver Mercedes. It was beautiful and it was clean. And the gentleman was 81 years old. So he was driving uh, and driving well. So that's the first thing, is that that's a cool extra job. And some folks who like to do that, that's wonderful. The second thing was he was brilliant. And it turned out in our 20-minute drive, I found out that he was one of the initial engineers from AT&T who built the first cellular tower. And we had a long discussion. I've been telecom for 25 years. We had a really nice discussion about it. So I've met lots of interesting people, and I've enjoyed that a lot. And if I don't enjoy it, I put my earbuds in. So that's all right. All right, that's a lot on transportation, but it's an important piece in what we look at. And then who will I have lunch with? This is more, how do I get out? And who's the social that I'm going to do? And if you'll put it one more step with me, it's important. It's important to think about, how am I not going to be isolated? I've been married with my bride for, it was 28 years last Saturday. Um, Robbie's going to send the gift to me, I know, this week. I'm sure it's coming.
I can't hear you, Jeff. I'm sorry, what?
We've had a lovely 28 years. My parents are coming up on 60 in 2 years from now. I'll be very happy for them. But there's a likelihood that one of us is going to pass before the other. And we have to be careful of that we end up living alone, and we need support and help, not just in the house, not just in transportation, not just how do I feed myself and take care of myself, but also socially. And so it's important to think about that. I'm going to talk about having fewer children on this next slide, inside there. When we think about Robbie, in fact, I love that you're the one here, so I can plug you. Robbie's job is bringing people into your homes or into your places where you're living to help with caregiving as needed, just home health stuff. And why is that so important? Well, the traditional role for that, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to be sexist, it's what it is. The adult daughter, the oldest adult daughter, was the one who took care of parents. The oldest adult daughter is now working. The oldest adult daughter now may live 500 plus miles away. I have two younger brothers, and my wife is the closest, 510 miles away. She happens to be the youngest of the three children on her side of the family, but the closest, the eldest daughter, is not the closest, but she's DC to Tempe, Arizona, and that's a long way and hard to get around. So if that daughter is not there to do that, who's going to do it? And who else helps him take those pieces on? People that work for Robbie, and by no means is his the only company, with no disrespect. There are lots out there, but there's a lot. There's a lot of need for this, and we're seeing that as we have less children, we have less caregivers. As we have less children, we also have less people to be going into those caregiving jobs. So many of the caregiving jobs that we're seeing are coming from all over the world, as opposed to just in the United States, which can cause some people distraction or concern. How's their English? How's their traditions, et cetera? And those are important pieces, but it's a very big deal as we go forward. You'll go another slide for me. We'll talk about the idea of retirement and how we stay social, right? So we don't have caregivers who are going to be social with us. that's their job, but it's important. And I will tell you that for the men who live good long lives, we are not as good at being social as our counterparts, females, are. So females have worked at the same time and still built a social network, and men not so much. We were working and focusing on the career and maybe the family and maybe some sports and maybe our cars or the passion we have, but not as big a social circle. So when women retire, the good news is there's a good group for them usually, and or more, from a heuristic perspective, and not as much for men. So it's important that we find those things and find ways to be social with each other, and not just as a couple. As much as I love my wife, and we spent the whole day in Fort Worth from like 9 a.m. until 1 in the morning. We had a nice day, and we weren't tired of each other at the end of that day. But we probably wouldn't do that every week, right? We want to make sure we have other social, and that's important. So let's go one more slide forward, and we'll look at some of the ways that we can do this. So I shared with you that the MIT Age Lab, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, is part of the folks who helped identify the social and concerns that we have as we age. And then also with Harvard, two of the greatest schools with the greatest alumni networks working on making sure that folks are getting together and staying together. And we see these alumni groups doing a really nice job. In the last week, just to give an example, I didn't realize it so much, but as COVID started, there are 16 of us on a text chat that I have known since my freshman year in college. And we didn't have a text chat for the 16 of us for 30 plus years, but for a year now, we've had videos maybe once or twice a month. We've had texts that go by every single day now between the 16 of us, and we've just days in the last, and an anniversary in the last week, and it feels really nice. And that sort of gathering and regathering is awesome. And shoot, I hadn't seen some of those people live in 20 plus years, and I feel as close as I did before. It's not too late to reconnect ever. It's okay. Well, as long as we're still alive and able to have those discussions. But that's an important space to look at. And it's important because social interaction is really a big deal for making sure that we stay healthy and that we're able to have a good quality of life. And if you look at on this slide, you can look at all of the worries associated with troubles with isolation, depression, and not enough physical activity. And we get high blood pressure because we're eating sugary and stuff. And we have greater risk of death and lower lifespans. And on the other side, by being social, we're going out and just being walking and being with other people. We're challenging our mind and we're challenging our body and we're making ourselves physically more healthy as well. And it's a wonderful piece. So it's a really important thing, whatever we're doing. And it's important that we do that on a regular basis. We can choose what we're going to do. That social activity could be virtual. That social activity could be live. But make sure that you're finding things that you want to do. And like I shared before, that men weren't thinking about that social network, women may have. Men are going to have a hard time building that up. Think about it. What's important to me? Who do I know that likes that? How do I do that? And if you're the rooster in the hen house, you may have a different level of what you're looking for in social networking, and good for you. And I hope that you're polite and doing that well. But the one at the bottom is the one I want to spend just 1 second more on: volunteering, right? We talked about recreating, social, all that piece of it. The volunteerism and the donating, we've seen how much impact COVID had in this last year. There are so many places to be donating our time and our efforts. The folks that have action just got up and started going and helping in the food banks and helping in communities. Those are wonderful. But the people who are in the libraries helping reshelf books so that people will have that sooner, that's awesome just as well. Whatever you enjoy and whatever you are wanting to do, this is a wonderful way to go get it. And when you volunteer, there is very, very few people who say, no, we don't need that. Thank you anyway. They're going to welcome it in. And so please think about those things. All right, let's go to the next slide. And it's going to talk about, hit one more for me. The other expense that's big inside the budget, it's about healthcare. When we reach 65, we have Medicare, and we think, oh, now insurance is free, we're taken care of. Not quite. There are costs to it. The more we make, the more we spend on healthcare from the Medicare perspective. And the older we live successfully, the more things that are going to happen. Our bodies were not built originally to live to 100 or 105. There are blue zones in the world where people do that, and that's wonderful. Here in America, and especially in Dallas, I see a whole lot of fitness and a whole lot of slothiness, and that's okay. We can be whoever we want to be, but know that's an important piece of what we're going to have in healthcare costs associated with it for us, for our families, for our friends, et cetera. It's a big deal. And it's not going to get lower. We watch inflation on a regular basis, and healthcare inflation, and even as a part of long-term care, those inflationary things have been going up well over 2 to 3%. They're at the 3 to 5 and 6%. It's a big deal. And there's one little gap of white that Robbie has now filled in with other, and it means you can do whatever you want with it. If you wanted to send more donations to DAPS so that it would help with research, or if you want to send yourself to Tahiti because you've never gone there, those other things are wonderful. Now, it's important to know that this budget is not the exact budget you have to have. I'm sharing that these are all estimates. They just give us an average. But you don't see travel on there. Travel could be part of transportation, right? Travel could be part of housing, because I may go spend 6 months somewhere else and I rent a place. Travel could be food, because what's important to me is to go learn how to cook in Italy. Travel to me could be in the other area because I'm just traveling to Fort Worth for the day. Traveling to me could be my entertainment, right? Because I want to go to Disney World or whatever it is. And travel could be a charitable contribution, right? I want to go see the place that I've been contributing to. All those things are important. So travel, I don't care how you budget. And in fact, I'll live okay if you know how to budget yourself and you choose what those categories are. But I want you to remember that most folks think travel is an important piece of the budget, and we don't show it up there because it can show wherever you want. And it is something that it helps us with quality life to make sure that we're finding those places to go and enjoy that. And that's important. All right.
Jeffrey, if you were going to put travel as a totally separate segment, what percentage from this U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics would it be?
Well, I tell folks I'd like to see that it's around 5%. But what I tell folks is the same thing I told them on housing, right? If housing is an average of 35, you say I need 45, and I say travel is an average of 5, and you say no, I want to be part of the Club 33 inside of Disney, and I need to have a timeshare in Paris, and I need to have a timeshare in Orlando, and so I need 12% for that.
There's just no room for food.
That may be okay.
I'm kidding.
Yeah.
I gotcha.
So it's about your choices and your prioritizations. Right. And a financial advisor can help with that plan to make sure that it will fit. And as I shared, CFPs all fiduciaries, so feel free to talk to anyone that you know with the letter CFP after, and they're out to do what's best for you and helping them. All right, so I would spend 1 minute on intentional investing. If you go to the next slide, that's just about looking at the whole picture of what are we doing, what do I want it for, what are my goals. You can go to the next slide. It's just a picture of it. I don't want you to think about it as how much do I have in stocks, how much do I have in bonds, how much money do I have, how much is my wealth. I want you to think about the quality of life. I don't want you to be thinking about, do I have enough to afford this? I've listed a budget, and if I'm in that budget, I want to make sure I'm able to do the things I want in my house or in the community I'm at, or with the social people that I want to socialize with, or my goal is to make sure that I'm out and about where I'm going to go. So make sure that I'm spending those dollars on things I want and that will give me joy and pleasure and help my outlook, keep me active and alive and healthy. Those are the important pieces when we think of intentional investing. The last few slides give us a little bit of pictures from Joe and his message that, look, I love the fact that we went from 1945 to 1975 and got 10 years of extra lifespan, and from 75 to 95 got another 20 more years, so it doubled in half the time. And now from 95 to 2025, we think we'll see the average maybe over 100. Now, this last year with COVID, we've seen lifespan go down because of that. I don't think that's going to be a long-term impact. So I think we want to make sure that we're figuring out how that we can go live the way we want, longer, better. One more slide inside there. If you have questions about this and you want to talk to me, you're certainly welcome to. I'd be very happy to send you a workbook that shows those three pieces, and it tells it right here on this space. And I'll pass it to Dabs to distribute to those who want it. If you want to reach out to me, next slide. I think that's for my contact information. Yeah. So you can reach out to me or any of those folks. We can also send that to you, but you don't have to. There's not a need for it to be us. We just want to make sure we're educating properly and that you've got the choices that you have. I was going to take 50 minutes and I'm at 54 and I'm sorry. But I'd have to take any other questions, comments, issues, or concerns you may have.
You did great, Jeff. Thank you. And obviously you came in on the heels of something very unexpected. So thank you for your ability to shift gears. That is not an easy transition to make. So we appreciate you and delivering some important information. So yes, I will open it up to anyone. If you'd like to use the raise hand feature or the Q&A, or the chat. All those are available. If you have questions, comments, we encourage you to share those now. As I'm waiting for people, so Robbie, you responded to me about Beacon Hill, that's in Boston. Is there something, and maybe you mentioned this and I missed it, is there something similar to that in the Dallas area?
Well, that's a great question. So there's been a couple of kind of trial balloons that, like I said, I've got a whole presentation just about the Village Move. Ironically, not really in Dallas, one in Fort Worth, I think's had pretty good success, like 2 or 3 in the Houston area, and then one really successful one in LaGrange, Texas, of all places. So what it really takes is someone to embrace that, I know that crazy, that embrace that model, and one or two really strong leaders to put it all together. So it really is not Beacon Hill was just a good petri dish because everything was so dense right there, but it didn't have to be, but because of our sprawl, it makes it a lot harder, I think, to build that kind of environment. I feel like maybe in Uptown or a Deep Ellum or somewhere like that, where it's a small, dense footprint, where the services are there, would be the best potential success for us. But that's really not the absolute at all. It's really
I think the key is that you have to have a group that wants to do it together, because this is not professionals, right? And we have lots of wonderful professional communities around where, a neighborhood, 8 houses in a block will have the same company servicing it and providing it, or so you can have that experience. Or in a community like a Legacy or a Highland Springs, or we have lots of choices here where you can do that with professionals providing that to you.
Yeah.
And those are wonderful and easy as well.
And it's that model, the Village model, is exploding across the world because of the demographics, but especially it started in the US, but it's in, I think, at least 10 other countries. But I did that to speech to DAPS probably 4 years ago. So for what it's worth,
look at it. Back, because I think
it's a good one. It's very different.
A lot of interest.
In knowing the core of the DAPS membership, there's probably someone in there that would do it, and maybe just wherever their neighborhood is. I'm gonna nominate Barbara Glass, and she's not here to defend herself.
Good call. Always a good call.
Right. Now I'm a little frightened of Barbara.
And maybe you should be. Yeah.
Maybe I should be. Okay.
So we've got a question here from Marcy. Marcy is one of our board members. So Robbie, you've at least met her once or twice. So Marcy's question is, we are maximizing our HSAs. Planned on getting a long-term care policy in our mid-50s. Unfortunately, I was diagnosed with PD at 53. Therefore, I cannot get a policy. What else can I do to plan for medical coverage? That is an excellent, excellent question.
I'm gonna segue that to Jeffrey. That's Jeffrey's niche. If long-term care is the first step, but underwriting's tough, and there's some new hybrid products coming out that kind of fill the gap, but they're still underwriting. But Jeffrey might have a better solution for you.
Right. So there is less underwriting, as simple as 4 questions, and I would need to go research the insurance companies. But that person's certainly welcome to call me, and I will do the research to find out if you buy a permanent insurance policy or a permanent annuity, which will not have the same level of concern because they're betting on your life anyway. They're saying, okay, here's what the price will be. And it may be more expensive, but it would be available in that space. I'm not a big fan of annuities. I'm not trying to push that on you by any means. But permanent policies, companies like State Life, One America, have much less underwriting if we're looking at the permanent side of it, because they're going to say, okay, you passed, this is what we're going to do. And we'll put the dollars you put in will be what you come out.
Right. And there's no easy solution with long-term care. Like my dad couldn't qualify because he had a heart attack at 52, kind of like Marcy's age range, so he couldn't qualify. So there's other ways to do that, and there's some newer products coming out as well. But I'll put a little sunshine on that. If you do have PD and Medicare Advantage plans, not traditional Medicare, but Medicare Advantage plans are beginning to pay for the home care-based services that I provide. Like over 90% are adding it. Now, it's not a lot. It may be 50 hours or 100 hours a year, but it's better than, which is what we're getting today.
And it's
so I think
move in the right direction.
It's right. And so when you come up for open enrollment, talk to your broker. If you don't have one, we know some good ones. That if that's a hot point for you, they can find the right MA plan, Medicare Advantage plans to get that for you. And it helps you at least stay at home safe and sound, manage your condition, and not have to make a move. It's always nice to have options. And that area is going to be exploding. If nothing good came out of COVID, then even our stodgy friends at CMS recognize that home is the best venue to keep people safe and sound, to deliver the most cost-effective care. That's happened. So that's all encouraging, we think, from the home care perspective.
I may have one more comment on that, and I appreciate you bringing it up, Marcy. My concern, you was 52 when you identified it, and I'm not trying to bash on all of us over 50, and I'm well in that space too. We talk about long-term care when folks reach about 46, 47, because at age 50, there's a price increase because now I'm more likely to have it. And before age 45, if we're in that space where we're not doing heli-skiing and deep sea diving, we're not at a whole lot of risk. You could buy that, but I think you're spending dollars a little early for the risk that you're wanting to mitigate.
Right.
But at 50, that's where I'm saying to people, this is where you need to be thinking. And it's not too late ever, but it gets more expensive every year. And so it's important to think about that and have that plan in place. And I'm sorry that we didn't have that plan for you. And that now we're on that, but let's see if I can't find something for you.
But keep funding your HSA for sure, because those are powerful dollars. I can't encourage that enough. And Jeffrey agrees with me on that.
Yeah, triple tax free.
Triple tax, Kent, and then you have complete control of what you want to do with those dollars.
I tend to use those up quickly, or at least last year after oral surgeries and wisdom teeth being pulled, those dollars quickly disappear. So one more question that she's got. Being in her mid-50s, what other changes do you see coming to Medicare?
Medicare, well, if you put under the umbrella Medicare, traditional Medicare, I don't see a whole lot of changes there. But at warp speed, the Medicare Advantage plans, which do get kind of a bad rap, they just can be a lot more creative what they can cover. So, and they're not for everyone, but those Medicare Advantage plans certainly should be reviewed each year, and you can change it every year. So if you do have a bad decision and you don't like whoever it is, Blue Cross, Aetna, United, Cigna, you can change next year. So it's not like you're locked in. Getting back to traditional Medicare becomes a little challenging, but still, they are becoming paying for things like acupuncture and very creative alternative services that stodgy Medicare would never pay for. So that's pretty powerful too.
And every year, you need to do a very good look, because the most important piece for many of us is the medications, the Part D, and the formulary of who I cover and which medications I do and don't provide in Medicare. It changes every single year. So you need to make sure, and it's very easy. There's websites, and you've got somebody who's working with that's fabulous. Go with them. You don't, Robbie and I can recommend a couple people. They'll plug it in. Here's the meds. Here's what's going to be better. And now it may cost $150 more for this plan, but it's going to save us $5,000 in formulary on the drug prescriptions.
Yep.
And each year you can change that Part D, because the companies are doing it every year to you too. So it's nice that you've got it two ways.
You got it.
Well, guys, I thank you both so much. I think we're at a close. Excellent questions, great comments. Thank you just for providing us with some information and insight into a topic that can sometimes be dull, but Jeff, you were far from that. So thank you, and Robbie. Together, you guys make a great team. So this is being recorded. So I will absolutely put that on our YouTube channel. If not today, it'll be on there soon. So
Thank you.
And I'll share the worksheet with you so that you can share with anybody who needs it.
Please do. That would be great. That would be great. All right. Thanks again.
Thank you, guys,
for joining us. All right. Y'all
Thank
take
you,
care.
Lisa. Jeffrey, see you. Bye.
Bye.